done any studies on cannabis and spirituality at all? No? Okay. So we're going to talk about the different religions that exist in the world and the relationships that they have had with cannabis throughout history. We're going to do it briefly. Entheogens are plants that alter, that have a psychoactive effect on the mind that alter your perception of reality. Some of them are used for religious purposes, shamanic purposes, or in a spiritual context, but it must be obtained from a natural species in order for something to be considered an entheogen. Other entheogens are peyote, psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, iboga, and salvia divinorum, and there are many more. So cannabis is technically classified into this group with the rest of these different items. Now, the practice of using entheogens has been used for thousands and thousands of years. The Taoists used to mix cannabis with ginseng as a means to reveal the truths about the future, as a means of casting your spirit forward in time. So not only did they think that you would be able to see the future, but you'd actually be able to project your spirit into the future, gain the wisdom of the future, bring it back, and that's how. And now you have to remember, they weren't dealing with the 20 to 30% THC cannabis that we're dealing with today. The THC that these people were using was, I don't know, 1%, maybe less than 1% THC potentially. And, they really saw that this would have some sort of hyper-intuitive benefits. Cannabis is excluded in ancient texts and was reserved for religious officials and not shared with common folks. So it was like a higher level drug that not everybody had access to. Only those who were of a certain level of spiritual ascension. How cool is that, right? As Confucianism gained popularity, cannabis was no longer widely used in spiritual practice, and then Taoism eventually fell. So it's clear that because people stopped using cannabis in religion, that Taoism completely fell apart. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's very interesting that when you took away the cannabis, you took away the religion, right? But Hinduism is one of my favorite religions to discuss about cannabis because it has such an embedded tradition in that religion that still stands true today. Just as cannabis ceased in China, it actually rose in India in 200 CE. I have theories about that, by the way, which I'll explain later. But in Hinduism, it is said that the gods sent hemp out of compassion for the human race so that they may attain delight, lose fear, and increase sexual desires. Other popular Hindu stories are as follows. Cannabis originates from a spot of nectar dropped from heaven. Gods and demons churned the milk ocean in search of Amrita, Sanskrit for immortality, and received cannabis as a result. The deity Shiva's most favorite plant was cannabis. Due to this widely known fact, Bang, a cannabis-infused celebratory drink, is used throughout India from ancient to modern times. So, as you can see, Hinduism has extremely colorful, celebratory, language. I don't know what you want to call it. Traditions, right? Very deeply embedded. Shiva, for those who don't know, is one of the top three gods out of the million gods in all of Hinduism. Often portrayed in paintings with cannabis leaves or soma leaves, depending on who you ask. Eyes droopy, like he looks like he's high, and his favorite drink was known to be bongs, and that drink is still used all throughout India today in many different customary celebrations. Nuka, you can attest to that. You know anything about that at all?
Yeah, my first experiment was with
Bong, Bhang,
yeah.
and you've heard of them. They're a company that Bong chocolate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
The name is called ganja, actually, the cannabis name in Chan. I don't know what language in India it's called ganja. That's what mostly. That doesn't have 17-18%. I don't know exactly. Depends on which region it is grows. anywhere up to 10% THC.
Well, even in ancient times, you think it got up to
see,
Yeah, you know, that makes
but
a lot
they
of
don't know
sense.
THC. But
Yeah.
even now, that is very commonly smoked.
That's what I
And in
thought.
fact, that was my first experiment with smoking. Ganja.
It's commonly spoken in India.
Yeah, very commonly. What happened? Called religious people.
Among religious
Yes, people.
everybody.
Yeah, then they come in the village and they sit down in the center. When they smoke, oh, you want? Okay, you taste it. It's just communal process.
What's the regulatory environment like there? Can people just grow it?
It's illegal now to grow, but laws are not enforced the same rigor as here. So people grow it, they sell it, and
Right.
but smoking is not prevalent.
Well, there are certain districts where it's legal. Like there are certain districts that are.
In India.
Certain districts in India
Some states maybe.
certain districts in India that are very heavily Hindu based, that are traditional Shiva worshippers, like, I guess in different sects of that religion, like Christianity, there's certain that believe different things, right? And there are several groups or districts that very, very into like the Shiva side of things. So there, you'll see signs, bong here, bong there, bong everywhere.
Dong is just marijuana.
No, it's a tea.
Ganja,
It's a tea you drink.
Ganja.
It's a tea you
It comes
drink.
from the ganja plant.
It's actually made from finger hash. It's actually made with it's made with hash and spices and
But can you
that
buy
is
the guns? Can you buy the guns legally?
Yeah, you can. You can.
And
Pretty
the
cheap.
punishment in the illegal states isn't severe.
I don't know anybody, first of all, for ganja, to my knowledge, I don't think anybody prosecuted. The law is there on the books.
Yeah.
It's only affects if you want to say grow 10 acres of land.
Right, if you
Then
abuse it, yeah, right.
If you
Yeah.
put a small plot, garden plot, it grows.
So it's not like federally enforced.
No.
Because people are smoking it pretty clearly.
Really, yeah. Any
Yeah,
religious
pretty cool,
center
right?
you go,
And
it's
it's
so.
just interesting.
No,
It's different.
No, I think a lot of countries are like that.
Yeah.
In Cambodia, the same. And it was
No,
the same
almost
thing.
all
It's
Asian
illegal,
countries.
but it's not Thailand.
Yeah.
Don't get caught.
Yeah, I see.
Certain
Yeah,
countries-
Yeah,
it
that are very
changes
strict. But in
dramatically.
Cambodia, hold it on the street. You can't smoke in the street.
yeah.
You go back to a town, it's fine.
I see. Yeah, it's not smoke in the. It's certain places they smoke.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Temples usually they smoke, or some other.
Yeah, the religious
remote places
institutions,
they want.
yeah.
But not on the street, in the trains, in the
No,
buses.
but my point was, it's technically illegal there. There's
Yeah,
a law
right.
on the book but it's tolerated.
It's not like in China where it's
Exactly.
people by that.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to point out this particular group called the Sadhus. They're a very famous religious sect that are into Shiva. They're a large group. They only wear like loincloth and like a head wrap, and they paint themselves, and they refuse to work, and they all that they do is they get donations from society in order to continue to eat, and they just get together in groups and they smoke these huge chillum pipes that are like smoking a chimney, and they are left alone even in the illegal states. They have their religious right to practice. They're kind of like the Far Eastern Rastafarians, where they're legally allowed to practice this openly wherever they go, which is interesting that they're allowed that sort of courtesy. And they're probably one of the only religious sects other than Rastafarianism that in any country that are excluded from any sort of cannabis law. So in Buddhism, it's widely known that Buddha subsisted on one hemp seed per day for 6 years to aid his enlightenment. Buddha is sometimes depicted holding a bowl of cannabis leaves. Buddhist practitioners would often use cannabis to heighten awareness or facilitate meditation. Despite Buddhism forbidding intoxicants, for many Buddhists, cannabis is a part of spiritual practice. Now, Christianity, Christian traditions used the plant as well. In 1936, Polish etymologist Sula Benet proposed a radical new interpretation of Old Testament Hebrew text. According to her, a mistranslation had occurred in the original Greek version of the Old Testament, mistook the Hebrew word for cannabis, cannabosum, as calamus, a plant traditionally used to make fragrances. If her translation is correct, this would fundamentally change our understanding of the Old Testament. References to cannabosum are made in the Bible. So this, I put this out there for people to do their own research on that word, cannabosum. There's actually a lot of information available on that, and different circumstances, and really, really very interesting stuff. And there's one thing, part of it, that I remember from my own research, where they would talk about how in the Bible that the Jewish mystics and rabbis would often get into a tent and they would burn cannabosum as incense, and then they would come out of the tent and emerge with all the prophecies of the day. So it's one of those things where I believe that tradition of burning cannabis in a tent or in a hut is something that goes back to the Far East, because everybody knows Indian cultures are very into incense and burning incense, and I believe that that's probably one of the initial ways people found out about the intensity of the cannabis high, by just throwing massive amounts of cannabis plant into like an oven of some sort and just burn it, and then burn in the tent and as incense, and everybody gets high and they're like, "Wow, that's some pretty good incense," It's yeah, some intense incense. So and if you think about it, typically if you're looking to make incense, you're going to look for the plants that have the strongest and most pungent odor, and cannabis terpenes are the most pungent out there. So I'm sure that this was something that was widely used. Christian denomination Rastafari are known for their cannabis and spiritual practice. In Rastafari, cannabis is used in practice to heighten spiritual states for reasoning sessions. Rastafarians do not call the plant marijuana, they call it wisdom weed or the holy herb. This is a cult known as the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church, which was an incorporated church in the 1970s, which was featured on 60 Minutes in 1979. You can look this up on YouTube. It's a very, very interesting and humorous video. For being a sect of Rastafarianism, and these, by the way, are all white Jews, white Jewish group that decided to convert to become an incorporated Rastafarian church. And they used religion as a means to import and export cannabis from Jamaica to Miami. So essentially, they moonlighted as a religion, but they had a major cannabis import-export company from Jamaica. So, and the background of this Rastafarian group is they were all like wealthy people from California that set this whole thing up in order to just have an amazing trafficking operation. And even after they were featured on 60 Minutes, they managed to continue their operations as a cult import-exporter into the 80s, and so they generated a lot of money that way. In Islam, Muhammad did not prohibit cannabis, but did prohibit alcohol. Many Orthodox groups consider cannabis forbidden. Many historical Muslim groups consider hemp a holy plant. Hemp was used as a sacred medicine, and in 800 CE in Persia, hashish was used to appreciate the nature of Allah and in order to stimulate mystical consciousness. 900 BC.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Hashish is also same cannabis family, right?
Yeah, hashish is essentially was originally made from when you're out in the field and you're picking cannabis. You get all the sticky residue on your hands, so you roll it into a ball, and then they would smoke it or use it for food or whatever source, and that's how hashish was formed. Assyrian used cannabis as an incense to ward off evil spirits. Widely used in funerals to ward off spirits, and burned in the rooms of children to keep them safe. And the oldest religious use, was actually, the first known use of cannabis as an intoxicant was by the Scythians. The Greek father of history, Herodotus, is credited for documenting the Scythians' religious cannabis ceremonies, which included tent-like structures where they burned cannabis plants and censers on wooden tripods. Participants communally inhaled smoke vapors for ritualistic and euphoric purposes. So that's the first true hot box in a tent. Yeah, and this was just a little quick overview on a little 15-minute on the historics of spiritual.